When you think about the world's great love stories, Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde, Radha and Krishna are right up there. But what you might not know is that their story is way more mysterious, and honestly, way more revolutionary than you think.
For literally centuries, they've been held up as the ultimate divine couple. They're this incredible symbol of the deepest kind of spiritual love and devotion. There's stories everywhere, in songs, in dance, in worship all around the globe. But there's a fascinating twist.
So get this, what if I told you that Radha, the one person who seems completely inseparable from Krishna, isn't actually in the original stories about him, like at all? That's the mystery we're going to unravel today.
Okay, so here's the heart of the puzzle. You see Radha all over the place in later literature, in beautiful art and poetry. But when you go back to the foundational scriptures, the big ones like the Mahabharata or the Srimad Bhagavad Purana, which is basically the main source for Krishna's life, she's nowhere to be found. Those books talk about a group of gopis or milkmaids, but not one specific Radha. So, if she's not in the original books, where on earth did she come from?
Well, the answer isn't buried in some ancient dusty scripture. Nope, it comes from the brilliant mind of a poet. That's right, you heard me. Radha was introduced to the world in the 11th century by a poet named Jayadeva. He wrote this masterpiece called Geet Govinda, and in it he created Radha, this incredible character, to give a real, tangible face to that deep, passionate longing for Krishna. And this wasn't just some story. His creation sparked a whole new way for people to connect with their faith. This whole new approach was called Madhurya Bhakti. It's this path of devotion where your relationship with God isn't seen as, a servant to a master, but as this intense, intimate, passionate bond between a lover and their beloved. Jayadeva's work was so vivid, so beautiful, and so explicit that it made this radical idea incredibly popular.
Now, this quote from Srila Prabhupada really nails a crucial point. We are not talking about ordinary, everyday romance here. The love between Radha and Krishna is understood as something completely spiritual. Radha and the gopis, they aren't just regular women, they are seen as manifestations of God's own internal energy, acting out the purest, highest form of divine love imaginable.
Okay, so we know where Radha came from, but the bigger question is why? Why did this story, created by a poet, become so wildly popular that it practically overshadowed the original tales? Well, the answer has everything to do with the world it was born into.
You have to understand, medieval India was a really tough place for most people. You had this incredibly rigid caste system locking everyone in place. Spiritual salvation, the kind you get through rituals, was basically a members-only club for elite men. And for women, it was even worse. They were dealing with a deeply patriarchal system, forced into child marriages, and often forced into widowhood for life. For the average person, there just wasn't a clear path to feeling worthy or spiritually connected.
And right into this world comes the Bhakti movement, and it was a total spiritual revolution. It basically kicked the doors wide open. It said, hey, you don't need to be a certain gender or from a certain caste or know all these complicated rituals to achieve salvation. All you need is pure, unconditional love for God. For millions of people who felt left out and pushed down, this was an incredibly powerful, empowering idea.
And this was a radical shift from the ideals of the time. Before this, the ideal couple was Sita and Ram. Their relationship was all about duty, social rules, and convention. And let's be honest, Sita ends up being a victim of that system. Radha is the complete opposite. She's not a wife. She's a passionate beloved who breaks every single social rule to be with the one she loves. Her love isn't about duty. It's about a devotion so powerful it completely subverts that whole repressive system.
But here's where things get even more complicated. This story of rebellion and subversion, well, it had two sides. It became this powerful tool that could be used in really different and sometimes even contradictory ways.
For women, especially those stuck in loveless, oppressive marriages, Radha's story was a lifeline. It was this divine and therefore safe way to explore and express all these feelings of love and desire that were completely forbidden in their real lives. It took what society would call illegitimate love and said, no, this is actually the highest form of devotion. It gave women this powerful, secret, inner world of freedom.
But, and this is a big but, the story didn't just empower women. Men, especially powerful kings and rulers, latched onto it too. But they didn't identify with Radha, they identified with Krishna.
They looked at his relationship with all the gopis and saw a divine permission slip for their own polygamy, using the story to make their own affairs seem spiritual and glorious.
And you can literally see this in history. You have King Sawan Singh of Kishanbar, who sponsored this whole style of famous miniature painting, where his own favorite courtesan was the model for Radha. Or look at Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, who used the themes of Radha-Krishna love in Kathak dance and music to basically celebrate his relationships with his concubines. So the same story was being used as a tool for female rebellion and for patriarchal justification. Wild, right?
And you can see exactly where the line was drawn with the 17th century poet Mudhu Palani. When she, a woman, dared to write about Radha's love from an explicitly female and sensual point of view, it caused a massive scandal. It wasn't the sexuality that was the problem. Men had been writing about that for centuries. It was that a woman was owning it. Her work was banned, which just goes to show you that the patriarchal system would only let this subversive story go so far.
So, even with all this conflict, this incredible push and pull, the story of Radha's love didn't just disappear. Oh no, it flourished. It became a central part of living, breathing worship that is still incredibly vibrant today.
And one of the most beautiful ways this legacy comes to life is the Shri Krishna Madhura Utsava. This festival is all about celebrating the Rasa-lila, this divine cosmic dance between Krishna and the gopis on a full moon night. And this isn't a performance for an audience. It's a spiritual act where God and the devotee are dancing together just for the pure joy of giving pleasure to each other. And we're not talking about some small one-off event. This divine dance, the Rasa Yatra, is a massive festival in spiritual hubs like Vrindavana and Bengal, and it's celebrated by ISKCON devotees all across the globe.
You know, if you just look at a modern Vaishnava calendar, you can see just how deeply Radha has been woven into the fabric of the faith. Take the 2026 calendar, for example. You've got Krishna's appearance day, Janmashtami, of course, but right there with it is Radha Shaptami, a huge festival celebrating Radha's appearance. The poet's creation, the fictional character, is now a goddess celebrated in her own right. So think about that, a character born from a poet's imagination to give a voice to the voiceless and to push back against social rules, is now a central figure of devotion for millions. Radha's story was all about a love that broke the rules for a higher spiritual purpose. And that kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What unwritten rules does love in all its forms still challenge in our world today?